Let's be real. In medical school, the workload is ridiculous, the content is infinite, time on the other hand is restricted, and we never seem to know enough. So it makes sense to be deliberating whether or not you should give up some of your time during your summer to study and revise. In this video, we're going to be discussing if medical students should be revising during summer. I'm going to be sharing what I personally think and have done and giving you my recommendations. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Hiba and I'm a fourth year medical student studying at the University of Manchester. I've just finished my fourth year and I'm moving into my final year now. And being completely honest with you, I've never spent even a single day during my summers in medical school studying medicine. That is up until this year. This year, I do intend to spend some of my time during my summer revising my knowledge in preparation for year 5. When I made this decision, it got me thinking why I've never felt the need to revise during my summers up until now, what the reasons for and against it would be, and what I would personally recommend to other medical students. So I'm going to start off by talking about the reasons against trying to revise and study during summer. And I think in most cases, especially in the earlier years of medical school, these reasons outweigh the reasons for revising. So firstly, just to begin with, you need time to relax, full stop. I know the majority of you don't want to hear this, you already know it, but honestly, during term time, medical school is so stressful. It's incredibly hectic with deadline upon deadline, exam after exam, and it would just be really unhealthy if you didn't give yourself a break after all of the studying you need to do in term time. Instead, if your brain is so exhausted and you still try to force yourself to persist through studying, it can make it much more difficult to learn and just make you exhausted by the time the new year starts. So I'd recommend taking a well-deserved break to ensure that you're completely refreshed when it comes to the new year. Moving on to the next reason. I often hear people saying that they want to revise during summer because they fear that others will be ahead of them, others will be revising, they fear that they'll be left behind, or they feel as if they'll forget everything. I can tell you now that the majority of people will not be revising during summer. Also, the majority of medical schools don't expect you to be revising during your summer. So you shouldn't be afraid of being left behind. From my experience, every year, the first day of the new academic year, literally everyone says they've forgotten everything, but once you start getting back into it, everything comes back to you. Of course, it is easy to forget information because of the amount that we have to learn, but most of the time it does only take just having a few glances at the topics for it to come back to you, and I don't think this is something that needs to be done during summer. Next, kind of similar to what I said before, but at the start of every year, most universities will give you an induction week, or at least a few days, and the whole purpose of this is to allow you to get back into things, to give you a refresher of the things that you need to know. So again, I'd recommend relaxing over summer and using this week or so to go over anything that you feel like you need to. Lastly, I personally think it's just harder and more difficult to learn and pick things up when you aren't studying as part of your group. Going to your university classes, going to seminars, lectures, anatomy classes, for example, it's much harder for you to link knowledge that you're reading out of a textbook to real life and real practice when all you're seeing is a textbook and you're not having that interaction with your peers and your colleagues and your tutors. You're not meeting up every week to discuss the topics. You're not doing or seeing anything practical to consolidate that knowledge. Basically, I just feel like it would require a lot more effort for you to learn something alone at home during your summer than for you to learn the exact same thing if it wasn't your summer holidays. So for these reasons, I've never actually revised during any of my summers, like the vast majority of medical students, and I'm pretty sure we all managed to do just fine. It's not something that I regret whatsoever, and my personal recommendation would be not to revise during your summers, especially if you're in your pre-clinical years. With that said, I do acknowledge that there are various reasons why a medical student may want to revise during their summer, which I'm going to go through now, and one of them applies to my situation. Firstly, while in term time, we have a very limited amount of time to spend on each topic. For example, you have 1 week to learn about 5 different diseases, and when that week is over, the next week you have to learn about 5 new diseases. It can get really hectic and time can be really constrained, and it's really difficult to find the time to do things that you haven't got round to finishing. So I guess spending some of your time doing some of that work during the summer would allow you to work at your own pace without the time constraints. The next reason that I commonly hear is because as medical students we do have such a hectic lifestyle, suddenly when there's not that much to do, it can get boring quite quickly, especially for the year groups that have a longer summer. Of course, I'd recommend going on holiday or doing something more entertaining than studying, but I agree if you don't have much else to do, then it's not the worst idea to use that time studying. The next reason would be that if you know from experience that it does take you a little bit longer than everyone else in your year to get back on track with things, you feel as though the induction time isn't enough for you, then it would make sense to maybe start refreshing your knowledge a couple of weeks before the term starts. The next reason is the reason that I'm personally going to be doing a bit of work over my summer, and I think it mainly only applies to clinical years, and this is to fill any holes or gaps that you feel you have in your knowledge despite having completed all of the work that you're required to do. For me, I personally feel that the way my university's course is structured, there are quite a few topics that I was expecting to cover in year 4 which have still not been covered. And at the point of my degree that I am at now, it's clear to me that I won't be getting any additional teaching from the university on these topics, and that it's now up to me to cover them and to have the right knowledge before I move into year 5. So this is the reason why I've decided to do some studying this summer. Obviously, I'm going to be taking it very slow, doing it in a laid back way, and relaxing as much as possible as well. But yes, I feel like if you've identified something that isn't going to be covered in your course but is going to come up in your exams, then it would make sense that you need extra time outside of term time to go over this content. So just to summarize everything I've said in this video, I definitely don't think that medical students need to revise during their summer, absolutely not, and in the vast majority of cases I would advise against it. I don't think that you need to study in the summer to get a head start or out of fear of forgetting things or being left behind. It's easy to feel like you've forgotten everything, but it does all come back to you when you start university again. In the grand scheme of things, I don't think getting a head start makes any difference. As long as you do all of the required work during your term time, at the end of the year, you will be a competent medical student. Regardless of what you decide, make sure you're looking after yourself and getting some time to relax. If you found this video even remotely helpful, then I'd really appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up and also considered subscribing to my channel. If you have any questions at all, feel free to comment on this video. I reply to all of my comments and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.